Plays Gangplank to a very high level. He's very diverse as a player, and I love working with him.
Diverse as a player, even picking Lucian top lane at times.
Yeah. Oh, that game. I remember that game. It was against Fnatic. That was a H2k 1v9, that's for sure.
Hey everyone, this is Darius from the Shotcaller. I'm sitting here with Yamato from Vitality. How does it feel to grab that best of 5 win?
Oh, it feels fantastic. Of course, when you head into a best of 5, the one thing you want to walk away with is the W. And we won today. We got exposed in many ways. We showed weakness around the Baron, and we go home with a bye to semis, and at the same time, we go home with a lot of lessons.
So a lot of lessons that you will need to learn, given that you're facing Fnatic of all teams. Do you have something special prepared, or are you just gonna try to do your best and just follow your own game plan rather than specify for Fnatic?
I think when it comes to Fnatic, I think we are the ones in regular split that cause them the most amount of problems, because we had specific ideas of how we want to approach the game, and I think we had a good read on them, and we're going to just apply the same things. Fnatic is a very unique team. They are considered the best team in ELSS for a lot of good reasons. They have fantastic players. The last time around when we faced them, it went into this scenario where we were 40, 50 minutes into the game when we were super far ahead, and they were put in their element. Reckless and Soaz are veterans, and they knew how to really tear us apart in the later parts of the game. So there's a lot of things you have to respect when it comes into playing Fnatic. But I know for sure, if we play like we did today in terms of preparing Baron and the other things that we did wrong, then I know that we are going to get demolished. So we need to clean up our play, and then we can compete with them, because I think our early game is very good. I think our Baron play just needs to be polished more, and this is something that we've been working on. We didn't really show it today, but we are working very hard to make sure that it gets cleaned up.
It is a bit of an issue, given that Vitality has the highest rate of stolen Barons, 6 now. How do you solve that, though, as a team? Because obviously, with the Barons still today, you know, it's easy to always point fingers at the jungler, but it felt like it was an overall communication issue, and I think that's what Gillies mentioned on the PGL as well.
Yeah, for sure. There's no. You don't blame Gillies in this. Like in this series today, he stole a Baron as well, and that was also amazing. Like, it's called 50-50 for a freaking reason. And the Baron that we lost today was just a mix of calls. Like, we started doing Baron. They were in position to do it when we are 6,000 gold ahead, which shouldn't be a possibility. We missed the mark. We get. I think the biggest issue is that we get too impatient when the game is standing still. We want to make sure that things are happening, but there's no rush. There's no stress. We can just set up deep vision, make the enemy face check us. I think the biggest issue, like in game 2, was that we didn't dive the Orianna. We have mid priority and we have top priority. Orianna has no flash. We need to just rotate with Kate and Thresh and Sejuani all the way. We have the Shen in bottom lane. We need to just make sure that something happens on the Orianna. We take that tower, all of a sudden Cassiopeia can push all the way to an inhibitor, and when she pushes all the way to an inhibitor, Orianna's going to be cut off, and we can dive mid lane, we take the mid tower, and then eventually when they have no auto towers, then we can pressure Baron even easier. We just put the pings, when they face check, we make sure to cut them off, make them use their blue trinkets. They had 3 of them, which is a smart choice when you're behind, and we just basically played the game of attrition. But we rushed it, we started Baron while Olaf was behind the Baron pit, and that puts us in the 50-50 scenario, which is horrible. And we just need to make sure that we don't get impatient.
Fair enough. Now, that said, Gillies also mentioned in the PGL that after that second game, because it was essentially, it felt like a one game, like a free win for Vitality at that point, and then the team kind of threw, and there were a lot of emotions, he said, and it had to be calmed down, and everyone had to relax a little bit, and especially during the game. Was that something you had to enforce during the break, and did the dog help in that regard?
The dog helped me. Like, it was definitely nice to pet the dog when I see the team, my team is not playing as we've practiced. This is, I think this is the most hurting thing for a coach. But I know the guys by now. I've listened to them 12 hours a day. I know them by heart, and I can just recognize when there's a slight change of tone. And there was definitely frustration. And I think it comes back to what I said earlier about impatience. I think impatience, frustration goes together in a game like this. And we were trying to do, I think everyone wanted to take the responsibility to define what we do. And there was just a mix of calls. And in the end, when you mix calls, the communication becomes messy and people get frustrated because they feel they don't get listened to. They feel like nothing is happening, and that's a cause of frustration. But of course, the moment we got out, we have practiced and solved these issues during the regular split in a specific fashion. So it's very easy for me to explain to the guys that it's unnecessary, it's something that we should filter out, and everyone, just based off past conversations that we had together, they could easily just snap out of it and realize that this is business. There's no need for emotions. We snap out of it. We go into the next game, and I think Game 3 was a good game. After that, I don't think it was affecting us at all.
Game 4, what happened there? Was it just okay?
I think Game 4 was so we have the Shen in top, and the enemy team. I think this is the game they had the Kassadin into our. What did we play in mid?
Vladimir.
We had Vladimir. Okay, so Vladimir has prio into Kassadin early on, but we picked Vladimir to combine it with the Shen. And the biggest issue with this is that when you play against Kassadin, you have a lot of mid prio, but Kassadin scales like a mother trucker, right? So he scales very hard, so you need to make use of it. We took a lot of damage onto the Kassadin tower, and we needed to rotate this pressure into bottom. We have the Shen ultimate, we have TP advantage, we want to make sure that we pretty much pressure the bottom. They have Caitlyn, we have Tristana, we can commit on them all in and do fantastic things. But the big issue that we ran into was that I think Jack Troll was underperforming on his Tahm Kench. I think he struggled in the early game, he was out of focus, and level 1, he dropped to 100 HP. Later down the line, Gilius was invading Shook and he forced him out of his jungle and he tried to follow the Morgana, ended up getting caught, died. And so when bottom is getting pressured that much, it's too hard for us to set up the play, because by the time we could set up the play, bottom tower was already done. Bottom tower was gone, we lost bottom too hard. And when we have Shen into Sion, Sion's gonna outscale, Kassadin is not being pressured, he's reaching the point where he starts to beat Vladimir. They got the Drake during this as well, which was a Cloud Drake, a powerful Drake. They made the rotation into top, used the advantage of Caitlyn, and just continued to snowball the map. And when we are the team that gets pressured, and we also, of course, if enemy team is ahead, we get outskilled as well, then the game is going to look very rough. I think we could have potentially tried a bit more to create things, because I think we kind of just gave up and folded, which is something I'm not too happy about. But the early game was definitely very hard. And in the previous games, we had a good early game, and I think it was just too much of a change of pace for us in terms of how the other games went. So this game was quickly decided about what happened bottom lane, and I'm just so happy and proud of Jack Troll, because Game 5, he played out of his freaking mind. Game 5, I think support is often the role that gets so underappreciated, but he did so freaking much. He created so much pressure into Ashe Tahm Kench, which Ashe is a long-range AD carry, should pressure Tristana early on. They played with Zakara on bottom side for the most of it. We got to kill Ornn during the time they did it, but he always found windows to create pressure bottom, make sure that Tristana is healthy, and that was crazy. Later in the fights, he caught every Ornn ult and he reduced so much damage. He counter-engaged, applied his passive to so many people, and I think it's very important to highlight how phenomenally well he played that game. And to me, that's a fantastic asset. You know, a player has a bad game, he comes into Game 5, plays wonderful. That to me is the thing that that makes me the most proud if I had to choose one thing. When a player has a bad game and comes into Game 5, boom, performs so well. So I'm super proud of Jack Troll's Game 5 performance after the rough 1 and 4.
Is that something that you might not even be able to properly train into a player, but it's kind of a natural ability of certain people?
I think it's definitely possible to train it. I think some people have an easier time than others, but I think this idea of viewing it as business is something that can be trained, and we're doing a lot to train it. And I think it was very helpful for us today.
Fair enough. Now that said, Vitality was always kind of looked at as a one-man team, even Jizuke really standing out and, you know, getting all these chances and getting into the MVP teams at this point. Really impressive, of course, in his rookie split, the best mid laner in EU. But that said, Mini Trupax today, as well as Darktroll and Gilius and Kabusha, are also pulling their weights, but Mini Trupax really stepped up today and really put on his carry pants, especially in the last game on that Tristana. That was amazing to see.
For sure. I think Mini Trupax today, he ramped up. Game after game, he played better and better and better. And game 5 was just Mini Trupax in his final form. I think he played very well in the lane phase, played the team fights very, very well. I think there was this one time where he got caught in mid lane with Flash, which Mini Trupax, come on, man. I think besides that one, he played a very phenomenal series. I think he definitely deserved the MVP because he, as you said, put on his carry pants and just went Super Saiyan as the best of series proceeded, for sure. Yeah.
Fair enough. Kabusha has been the long-term member on that team. Gilius obviously has a lot of experience as well, but Gilius also missed out on LCS and away for a decent amount of time instead of Kabusha. How has it been like to work with him specifically?
I love working with Kabusha. We see eye to eye on most things. We have when I came into Vitality, he aligned with my philosophy of how I like to play the game and how I like to do things outside of the game very easily. And I think his experience definitely shows. I think it's something that is a necessity when I'm working with a lot of rookies. He's the guy that is able to bring people together in game when things get messy and people get stressed and things get hectic. I think that's a very powerful asset. And then individually, as just a top laner, I don't think he has problems with any top laner in ELCS. I think this meme about him not being able to play tanks, I think is completely abolished. I think mechanically he's phenomenal. I think I think he can compete with the best of the best. So he's a well-rounded person, and I love working with him. I think he's a player that just goes under the radar all the time. People say, "Oh, he can't play tanks." He plays tanks. No one says a word. And then even against G2, he was solo killing Wonder and doing phenomenal things on the Gnar, and he plays Gangplank to a very high level. He's very diverse as a player, and I love working with him.
Diverse as a player, even picking Lucian top lane at times.
Yeah. Oh, that game. I remember that game. It was against Fnatic. That was a Jizuke 1v9, that's for sure. Lucian was not a good pick into Vladimir, that's for sure.
To be fair, though, it was his invention back in the day, and then Huni picked it up and it kind of became a Huni meme, but Kabusha was the first one in LCS.
For sure, he was the first one. It's been buffed as well. Maybe it will come back. Press the attack is phenomenal. Might come back.
Oh boy, I'm very excited about that. You did mention, though, how you usually agree on most things. What happens when there are disagreements specifically between players and the coach? How do you essentially assert that a certain perspective needs to be upheld?
I think it depends on the situation. I think today, I feel I am in the position where I take the final call. And I take responsibility for giving someone else. Like, for example, if a player tells me, I want to play this champion, and a part of me thinks, oh, it's not a good idea, but I'm going to trust him this time. It's my responsibility as well. I think for any in-game decisions, any team decisions, I feel 100% responsible, regardless if I got the idea from a player or not. So I think it's my call in the end. In terms of disagreements, I think it just depends on the moment and how much I disagree with the person. Because sometimes a player tells me, I really want to play this champion. And I think having a player in the right place about a specific champion is also a powerful thing. I think if a player comes into the game playing something that he's less comfortable on, that could matter too. But I think I've found a very good balance, because there's been times where players are like, oh, I shouldn't. And then they know that they can trust me. So I think it's all about just finding a balance and giving and taking. And for example, today, H2k wanted to play Talia game 5. I was against it because playing Talia against Zach, Ornn, Ashe, and Kassadin is pretty difficult because she's really immobile. But he said, I want to play it, and he played it fantastically the games before. So there was a lot of positives with it. And he just said that, trust me, and I was like, okay, let's go for it. He played all the games, he played Talia on stage, he played very, very well. So I just let him fly. And it worked out very fine.
And that's, of course, the proudest moment as a coach, I would assume.
For sure. I think his Talia was phenomenal. It's a hard game versus Zach and Kassadin, Ornn, etc. We have a Braum that disengages him. Like Talia Flash is super important in a game like that. And I think he used the priority he gets against Kassadin very, very well. I think we pressured the map, we got advantages, and he played the early game phenomenal.
Anything you ever wanted to say to the world, not just to the ELCS fans maybe, but just something that you always wanted to get out there? Now's your chance.
To the world. I think if I got to speak to everyone in the world, I would tell them that focus on the things that you can change. I think a lot of people are striving for happiness because they look in magazines, look in TV, like a TV, and see celebrities smiling all the time, but they're also just people. There are two things that are inevitable in life, and that is pain and suffering, and we as people need to make choices for what we suffer for. So if you have any dreams or aspiration, you have to understand that there will be suffering either way. You have to commit, suffer for a purpose, or you don't commit and suffer for a bad purpose. So instead of trying to look for happiness, look for the feeling of feeling accomplished. Strive for something, find a goal, and just push yourself and improve yourself. Don't blame other people. Take responsibility for what you can take responsibility for. And the things that you can't control over that happen, you just have to accept them and make the most of it. Best of luck to you.
I think that's some beautiful words to end the interview on. This was, of course, Yamato from Vitality and Darius from the Shotcaller. Hope you had a good day. See you then. Hey everyone, this is Darius from the Shotcaller, and I hope you just enjoyed that interview. This is a generic end card, so make sure to click here for another interview or here for a different interview. And if you want to check out more content, specifically from the NALCS, make sure to visit theshotcaller.net for more interviews and other esports content. Have a good day.